June Aldridge was the heart of Farris Hollow, and Howard Bexley was its polished face. But when June turned up dead and secrets began to unravel, the town discovered that the people they trusted most were hiding the darkest truths. Farris Hollow was the kind of town where everyone waved at each other, even if they didn't know your name. Nestled in the hills of Western Virginia, it had only one grocery store, one gas station, and one school. Most families had lived there for generations. Life moved slow, predictable. So when June Aldridge, the town's beloved high school art teacher, didn't show up to school one Monday morning, it caused more than just concern. It caused fear. June was known for her warmth. She had been teaching in Farris Hollow for nearly 15 years. Her classroom was always filled with music, color, and a sense of calm. Students adored her. Parents respected her. She organized the town's annual mural project, painted portraits for the mayor's office, and even ran weekend art classes at the library. People didn't just like June Aldridge. They trusted her. Which is why, when her car was still in her driveway on a school morning, someone called the police. Officer Mendez arrived first. He knocked on the front door, then again louder. There was no answer. The neighbors hadn't seen her since Sunday afternoon, when she had returned home from her usual walk in the park. Her porch light had been left on overnight. Nothing about the house seemed off, no broken windows, no forced entry. But the door was locked from the inside. With permission from the school principal, who was also her emergency contact, the police entered through a side window. Inside, everything was still. The coffee pot was clean. A half-read book rested on the arm of her couch. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, and her purse was still on the dining table. Her bedroom looked untouched. There was no sign of a struggle, no sign that she had packed for a trip, no note, just silence. Within hours, search parties were organized. Students, teachers, and neighbors combed through the wooded trails she used to walk. Drones were sent over the hills. Volunteers called out her name from every direction. But the sun set that day with no trace of June. The fear deepened when day 2 passed with nothing. Rumors spread fast. Maybe she ran away. Maybe someone followed. Her home? Maybe she had a secret life no one knew about. People speculated, whispered, and watched each other more carefully. On the 3rd day, a group of hikers spotted something near Ashpine Bridge, a narrow wooden crossing just outside town. In the creek below, half buried in the mud, was a body. It was June. Her body was identified quickly, and the medical examiner confirmed the cause of death: blunt force trauma to the back of the head. There were no defensive wounds, no sign she had tried to run or fight. It seemed she had been struck from behind. Her watch, still on her wrist, had stopped at 9:47 p.m. The town's sorrow quickly turned to suspicion. The police began asking questions. Her friends, her co-workers, her students. Everyone wanted to know who would want to hurt June Aldridge. The first person brought in was Martin Vale, her ex-husband. He still lived in town and worked at the only auto repair shop. Their divorce had been quiet, but bitter. Some remembered shouting matches outside the courthouse 2 years earlier. Martin told the police he hadn't spoken to her in weeks. He was working overnight the day she disappeared, and the shop's security footage confirmed it. For now, he was ruled out. But with no evidence, no witnesses, and no clear motive, the case stalled. The only thing certain was that someone in Farris Hollow had done something terrible. And whoever it was, they had planned it carefully. The town that had once felt so safe now felt smaller, darker. People looked over their shoulders, locked their doors, and whispered the same question. If it could happen to June Aldridge, it could happen to anyone. Detective Lynna Gray had been with the county sheriff's department for just under 5 years. Most of her cases involved stolen farm equipment or neighbor disputes over property lines. Nothing like this had ever landed on her desk before. The murder of June Aldridge shook her to her core, not just because of how brutal it was, but because it felt personal. Farris Hollow was her hometown. She had once been June's student herself, With Martin Vale cleared, Lina turned her attention to anyone who might have had a reason to hurt June. As she combed through old school records, she came across an incident from 2 years earlier involving a student named Nolan Crisp. Nolan had been suspended after a confrontation with June during class. Details were vague, but the report mentioned Nolan growing agitated when June criticized his artwork. According to staff, he had stormed out, knocking over a cabinet on his way. Nolan was 20 now, living in a rundown rental on the edge of town. He hadn't continued his education and worked part-time jobs, mostly yard work and hauling trash. When Lina knocked on his door, she found him calm but uneasy. He said he hadn't seen or spoken to June since graduation. He didn't ask what had happened to her. He already knew. Inside Nolan's home, something felt off. Lina spotted sketchbooks stacked neatly along the wall. Out of instinct, she asked to look through them. He didn't refuse. The first few books were full of landscapes and abstract images. But then came the portraits. June's face drawn over and over again. Some were gentle, showing her smiling or painting. Others were twisted, her features warped, her eyes blacked out. One drawing showed her lying in the creek, just as she had been found. Lina placed Nolan under arrest. The sketches were disturbing enough to warrant deeper investigation. The town was quick to accept his guilt. Nolan had always been seen as troubled, quiet, withdrawn, the kind of kid people crossed the street to avoid. And now, to many, it made perfect sense. He had snapped. June had tried to help him. He turned on her. But Lina wasn't convinced. Something about the timeline didn't add up. June's watch had stopped at 9:47 p.m. Nolan's neighbors, a retired couple, claimed they had seen him on his porch just after 10, talking on the phone. Cell tower data confirmed a call to his cousin in Ohio lasting 23 minutes. If he had killed June, he would have had to do it and return home within a window that felt impossibly tight, especially with no car and no one placing him near the scene. More troubling was the lack of physical evidence. There were no fingerprints on June's door, no trace of DNA under her nails, no muddy footprints between her home and the creek. Whoever had killed her had been careful, calculated. It didn't match the image of a troubled young man in a moment of rage. Lina felt like she was missing something. June's house had been locked from the inside. There was no sign of forced entry, and nothing was stolen. Whoever entered had either been let in or had a key. That narrowed the list dramatically. She needed another angle, something the killer didn't know they'd left behind. She ordered a secondary sweep of June's home, this time asking the forensic team to focus on hidden areas, vents, behind wall hangings, under furniture. That's when one of the technicians found something inside an old hallway clock. A small camera, no larger than a coin, wired behind the face. It had been recording silently, likely unknown even to June herself. The memory card was intact. Lina's hands trembled as she loaded the footage onto her laptop. If this camera had caught anything that night, it could hold the key to everything. And as the video began to play, the image of June Aldridge walking to the front door at exactly 9:43 p.m. filled the screen. The next moments would change everything Lina thought she knew about the case. The footage from the hidden clock camera began with the soft light of June's hallway. For several hours there was nothing, just the stillness of an empty house. Then at 9:43 p.m., movement. June appeared, walking calmly from her living room to the front door. Her shoulders were tense. She paused before opening it. That was the first sign something wasn't right. Standing at the door was Greta Tamsin. Greta had lived next door to June for over 10 years. She was a retired librarian, known for her quiet nature and her obsessive love for historical novels. She hosted weekly book clubs, fed stray cats, and baked cinnamon bread for the church bake sale. No one had ever considered her capable of anything, more than a stern shush at the library. In the video, Greta stepped inside carrying a large canvas tote. June seemed hesitant, but she didn't push her away. The two disappeared from the camera's view into the living room. 4 minutes passed. At 9:47, Greta exited alone, closing the door behind her. June never appeared again. Lena stared at the screen. She played the clip over and over. Greta had entered just minutes before the time of death. It was no longer a coincidence. Police brought Greta in for questioning. She didn't deny visiting June that night. In fact, she admitted to it immediately. But her explanation caught everyone off guard. Greta claimed that June had asked her to come over. According to Greta, June had been frightened in recent weeks. She believed someone had been watching her. She had heard things at night, footsteps outside her window, her mailbox left open, her door unlocked in the morning. June had asked Greta to take a few personal items and keep them safe. Greta opened her tote bag and revealed its contents: a scarf, a set of keys, a pair of earrings, and June's personal sketchbook. She said June had instructed her to leave quickly and to tell no one unless something happened. Lena was skeptical. The camera had only captured Greta's entrance and exit. It didn't show what happened in the living room. But Greta's story matched the timeline. More importantly, the sketchbook was real. It had June's handwriting inside, dated notes, and drawings, some of them marked with cryptic comments like, "He knows," and "Trust no one." Forensics confirmed that June's blood was not on any of the items Greta had taken, nor was there any sign of a struggle in Greta's home. She lived alone, had no criminal history, and no motive that made sense. Lena released her under supervision, but kept the sketchbook for analysis. Inside its pages, Lena found more than just drawings. Tucked between 2 sheets near the back was a printed email. It was addressed to the school board and dated 2 weeks before June's death. It detailed a formal complaint against someone at the school. The name had been crossed out in pencil, but Lena could still read it faintly beneath the erasure. Howard Bexley. He was the principal of Farris Hollow High School. A man with a clean reputation, known for his speeches at town events and his strict but fair approach to education. He had spoken at June's memorial, praising her commitment to students. But now, his name appeared in a complaint that had never been submitted. According to June's notes, she had intended to take the matter directly to the board. She feared the school administration would bury it. In her own handwriting, one sentence stood out: "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident." Lena felt her stomach turn. The pieces were aligning in a way she hadn't expected. Greta wasn't the one June feared. She had been a confidant, a safeguard. The real threat had been closer. Someone with power, someone with something to lose. As Lena read through the last entries in the sketchbook, one line echoed in her mind: "He's been here before." It was no longer a question of who had wanted to hurt June Aldridge. The question was how far someone had gone to make sure she stayed quiet. Detective Lena Gray returned to the footage from the hidden hallway camera. This time, she slowed it down frame by frame, looking for anything she had missed. When Greta left June's house at 9:47 p.m., the exact moment June's watch had stopped, a shadow passed across the window by the front door. It was brief, no more than a flicker, but it didn't match Greta's build. This person was taller, broader in the shoulders. It wasn't the shape of an elderly woman carrying a tote. It was someone else entirely, someone waiting outside. Lena enhanced the footage as much as she could. The face never appeared, but the posture, the height, it aligned with one person she had not seriously considered until now. Principal Howard Bexley. Bexley had inserted himself into the investigation early. He had offered to help with school records, even offered support to grieving staff and students. He visited the police station multiple times to ask for updates. At first, his presence seemed like genuine concern, but now Lena saw it differently. He had been monitoring the investigation's progress. She began looking into his background more closely. There was no criminal record, but Lena requested internal records from the school district, and what she found confirmed her suspicions. A deleted incident report recovered from an archived server described a student's complaint against Bexley from 3 years earlier. The complaint had been dismissed with little follow-up. The student later transferred schools. Then there was June's email. She had submitted it to the school board, but it had never been officially logged. The email listed inappropriate behavior and coercive communication toward students, and June claimed to have documented conversations to back her claims. The original file had been wiped from the school system's active records, but her printed copy had survived in her sketchbook. It was the kind of document someone with power would want to make disappear. Lena filed for a warrant to search Bexley's office and home. At first, there was nothing suspicious in plain sight. But in a locked cabinet inside his home study, police found a flash drive labeled Private. On it were hundreds of files, including surveillance footage from school security cameras, not accessible to staff. More troubling were audio recordings, conversations between Bexley and various students, some of whom were now adults. None of them had known they were being recorded. Timestamps revealed that Bexley had been in the area of June's home on the night she was killed. He had told the police he'd been at a school board meeting that evening, which had ended around 9:30 p.m. Security footage from the building confirmed that, but there was a 15-minute window unaccounted for, enough time to drive to June's house, wait until Greta left, and confront her. Faced with the mounting evidence, Bexley was brought in for questioning. At first he denied everything, but when shown the sketchbook, the footage of the shadow outside June's window, and the recovered student complaint, his demeanor changed. He stopped answering questions. It was a quiet confession later that night, made to his lawyer and passed. To the police, that confirmed what Lena had feared. Bexley had gone to June's house to confront her about the complaint. He hadn't expected Greta to be there. When she left, he entered through the back, using a spare key he had taken from the school office weeks earlier. He claimed the confrontation got out of hand. He struck her, panicked, and staged the scene to mislead the investigation. He then moved her body to the creek, believing water would wash away evidence. He had even planted a folder of old drawings in Nolan Crisp's locker days later, hoping to shift suspicion. The town was stunned. A man they had trusted with their children, who had spoken at every graduation ceremony, had killed one of their own in cold blood. Bexley was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Farris Hollow would never be the same. Parents became more cautious. Teachers looked over their shoulders. And though June Aldridge's life had been cut short, it was her courage to speak out and her decision to leave behind evidence that brought the truth to light. It wasn't just a murder. It was a betrayal. And in the end, it was the silent eye of a hidden clock that had caught the moment the town truly turned.